We need licensed compounding pharmacies to handle these peptides, compound these peptides, and dispense them pursuant to a doctor's prescription or a medical practitioner's prescription. That's the key. A lot of research use only peptides don't even have or require an interaction with a medical provider. So individuals are taking these, not even knowing, injecting them into themselves, not even knowing what the outcome of that will be from a clinical perspective.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Everything GLP-1 podcast. Today, we have Karla Palmer with us. We're very fortunate. Karla is a director at Hyman, Phelps and McNamara in D.C. and has over 30 years experience in working with the FDA and the DEA. Most importantly, Karla is brilliant, but very approachable and common sense and very humble. So we're very thankful to have you today. And today's goal is just to get kind of an update on the state of compounding in the country and the FDA and anything you may want to talk about.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lavin. This is a passion topic and a passion project of mine.
Give us a little of your history, how you got into compounding and how many years that's been.
Sure. So I've been at Hyman, Phelps and McNamara since 2010. Before that, I was at a large international law firm as the head of their trial group in Washington, D.C. So by training, I'm a trial attorney. In 2010, Hyman Phelps contacted me because they needed a trial attorney as part of their DEA practice. I moved over to the firm and wasn't really that busy, to tell you the truth, until 2012. I did some DEA work. I handle matters before the Drug Enforcement Administration. And then in 2012, the New England Compounding Center crisis happened. And Hyman Phelps had always had a little footprint in compounding. There was one director at our firm that dabbled in compounding here and there, but compounding really hadn't received any regulatory attention since 2003 or 4, when the 503A was challenged at the Supreme Court concerning its unconstitutional advertising provisions. So move forward to 2012, there was this disaster up in Massachusetts called New England Compounding Center, where about 100 people died and hundreds were sickened through a compounded methylprednisone formulation that was injected into spines. So people, you had meningitis from that, or they developed meningitis from that. It was a terrible catastrophe. And so the Department of Justice and everyone else looked at FDA and said, what were you doing about this? Where were you? So FDA put their foot on the gas, and they created a type of compounder called an outsourcing facility. Congress did back in 2013. I worked on that legislation on behalf of a client every day. And so that's how I got involved in compounding. There's nothing like getting involved on the ground floor in the middle of a national crisis to have you learn a topic very quickly. And there are very few people at the time that knew anything about compounding because, again, it wasn't regulated that heavily in the United States. So that's how I got started. 503B, which is the outsourcing facility part of compounding, like the large compounders at a bigger scale, et cetera. That act was passed in November of 2013. And with that act, FDA, Congress also reinvigorated Section 503A of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which is your typical drug compounder. It's compounding for individually identified patients pursuant to a prescription, etc. So now we have two types of compounding going on since 2013. One is through 503A, which is your typical individually identified patient compounding, and the other one was Section 503B, which is your larger compounding manufacturers at a bigger scale pursuant to FDA's manufacturing regulations, for lack of a fancy way to say it.
It's a little bit crazy because people don't really know in the general public what is compounding pharmacy, and so many people use it so often they don't even really know. So how would the average person come in contact with compound pharmacies?
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I became involved with a compounding pharmacy was when I had my second child, and he had an issue swallowing certain pills when he was very young, and so I had a compounding pharmacy make a compounded medication, a typical flavored medication. That is the most basic type of compounding that can be done. A solid is turned into an oral, flavors added, etc. A person can't tolerate shots. There's an oral form available. An excipient, an inactive ingredient, makes somebody sick. So therefore, a compounder can develop a different type of compounded formulation using that active ingredient, but with a different inactive ingredient that a patient can tolerate. So it's all about, it's really about compounding, different drugs using the same API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, in a way that compounders, have been around forever, but in a way that a patient can tolerate it. And I'm going to point that out. Compounding isn't new. Compounding has existed for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years. Tinctures, etc., those are all compounds at their earliest stages. So, in the United States, in other countries, compounding is ubiquitous part of our medical system. It's available on crash carts in hospitals. It's available in OR suites across the United States. It's a safer way to bring certain drugs to market. It's a more convenient way to bring more drugs to market. And, individuals every day rely on compounded medications made at large scale compounders or smaller scale compounders throughout the United States. It's an important part of the medical system in this country. People are losing that message, but it is the message that needs to be delivered.
I see it as this shift from kind of the big medicine where one size fits all for patients to today where we have much more customized, personalized care going on, which, at my age, I need personalized, customized care. I'm not doing the standard off the shelf healthcare. And I think compound pharmacies really, 503As, as you said, are really all about that. And they have blown up over the past 5, 6, 7 years in this industry of kind of longevity and optimizing health and staying as healthy as you can for as long as you can.
And one thing to point out here, and that you're exactly right, Dr. Lavin. One thing to point out about compounds, and we'll just take the 503A, so the compounding pharmacies there's compounding pharmacies in every state, in every town, in every city, that can make these medicines available to patients, period. Okay. And one thing to remember about compounds, and despite all of the lore we're all hearing about it from, I'm going to call them big pharma, compounded formulations, when they're done correctly, and most are done correctly, most, if not all, are done correctly, they're exempt. Congress has given them an exemption from certain provisions of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. FDA, through the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, approves the drugs that we put in our bodies, but compounded medications are exempt from FDA drug approval. It's not talked about that much. They are clearly exempt by an act of Congress. That act is 503A. They're exempt from the new drug approval requirements. They're exempt from certain labeling requirements called adequate directions for use. They're exempt from FDA's current good manufacturing practice regulations, which are a quality standard for drug manufacturers. If a compound's made in a 503A pharmacy, it indeed has those exemptions, okay? There are certain requirements that it has to comply with, but if it complies with those requirements, it does receive these congressionally mandated exemptions.
Wow. Yeah, I really don't think anybody knows that. So thank you for clarifying that.
Big Pharma believes that, they're trying to tout the message that compounded formulations are black market knockoffs. And
Right.
nothing can be further from the truth.
Right.
Compounded medications made at a 503A pharmacy that's acting within the bounds of the law, they are not making knockoffs. They are not making black market drugs. They are making federally supported, state-supported legal medications that are used every day by a significant segment of our society. They're not
Right.
knockoffs. They are legal. They are exempt from FDA approval, and there are ways to do it appropriately, and the vast majority of compounding pharmacies do so.
Right. And I'll give you an example. This morning, I had a call from one of my patients, and she said, um, I'm on this BPC 157. I'm like, well, first of all, that isn't approved. Where are you getting it? Because we see so many people that are taking these um, uh, sterile peptides from all these companies. And of course, they say for animal use only, or not for human use, or for research purposes only, which just means that's black gray market stuff. We don't know
Right.
the source. It's not tested. You don't know the sterility. You don't even really know what's in there or what the potency is. So I told her, where did you get that? And why are you doing that? You know, and we can go into what's happening with that. But she goes, "Well, I got it from my friend, and I trust him." I'm like, "That's the worst story ever. Your trusted friend is, giving you something that is clearly black gray market that should not be used."
Correct, correct. And so you wanna get peptides are, these are all peptides, BPC 157, it's a peptide. It's available fairly, largely in a dietary supplement form. But as far as these injections goes, there may become a time when we're all gonna be able to use BPC 157, and maybe we'll all be better off because of it. We'll all be able to legally use BPC, okay? Because I've suffered injuries. I've heard of the wonders of BPC,
Right.
et cetera, and I'm excited about this possibility. But that time is not right now. That time is after the BPC goes before what's called the Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee of FDA, and FDA makes a determination whether or not it's appropriate for use. It hasn't made that determination, but the door has been cracked open for it to be reviewed by the agency, and that is a great thing. Looking forward to the PCAC meetings in July of 2026, and I think there's going to be one in early 2027 where these peptides will be analyzed. But right now, they are considered gray/black market because they're not available typically through compounding pharmacies, and the biggest risk there is that you don't know the source of the active pharmaceutical ingredient. So
Right.
what causes the BPC, the PT, the SS31, whatever it is, you don't know the source of that ingredient. And the beauty of getting your compounds from a state licensed compounding pharmacy is that you know the source is from an FD that the API, the active ingredient, is from an FDA registered drug establishment. The compounding pharmacy must obtain its drugs, the starting ingredients of the compound, from an FDA registered drug establishment, and it must be accompanied by a certificate of analysis. That's in the federal statute. That's part of the legal compounding process. And that's what the compounder uses to make its compounded formulation that it dispenses to its patients pursuant to a prescription. That's why you want to use a state licensed compounding pharmacy, because they know how to do it right. They're inspected. Um, FDA is also watching them. The states are watching them. Other states into which they ship also pay attention to what these compounding pharmacies do.
That is also important because, like you said, big pharma tries to lump sterile compounders that source their active ingredient from an FDA registered site. They have their own testing. They do sterility testing. They know the potency. And so you're getting a safe product. Whereas everything on this black gray market, where tell everyone, if it says for research purposes only, not for human use, animal use only, don't use it, because you have no idea. But to group those two groups together is kind of dirty tactics by big pharma, because those are two separate. And I see big pharma and compound pharmacies as being, they can coexist because there's a need for both. But that black gray market, they have to shut that down. That's dangerous.
Right. Right. And I think the black gray market is tricky for FDA because, research use only or RUO is not regulated. So I think FDA has been caught a bit unaware by the RUO explosion, and it really has come through these peptides. So I think that that's why FDA is trying to get control of the situation through actually using a nomination process and ensuring that these peptides are appropriately reviewed by experts so that they can be made available to the public through, again, licensed compounding pharmacies. So that's really important. I mean, we need licensed compounding pharmacies to handle these peptides, compound these peptides, and dispense them pursuant to a doctor's prescription or a medical practitioner's prescription. That's the key. A lot of research use only peptides don't even have or require an interaction with a medical provider. So
Right.
individuals are taking these, not even knowing, injecting them into themselves, not even knowing what the outcome of that will be from a clinical perspective.
Right. There's no clinical oversight because no
Correct.
physician wrote the script because a physician can't write a script to a black market source. I mean,
Right.
that so, there's so many levels that is the wrong way to go. And, everyone, well, first of all, there is big demand. I mean, the demand is there. Every person in a gym is whispering to each other, where are you getting your BPC, blah blah blah. So there is incredible market demand without any physician oversight or any oversight on the actual active ingredient as far as its sterility or potency. So they're dropping the ball on so many levels. So you to bring these into the mainstream in 503As where they can then have physician oversight and also have sterility testing and potency testing and source from FDA registered facilities.
Right.
It's just night and day.
Night and day. And Dr. Levin, I'm going to point out too when you say sterility testing and potency testing, what is meant there is that prior to when the patient receives the product, there's a sterility test run on it and a potency test run on it. And there's usually like some type of endotoxin test run on it at some point too. So what that does is that really protects the patient against the three greatest contaminants in a sterile product. So if the product is released after release testing, which is sterility, potency, and endotoxin, you know that that product is not going to, the product itself, the attributes of the product that could be unsafe are not going to make a patient sick. I mean, the patient may have an adverse reaction to the drug. That's different. That would happen whether it's a compounded or drug or an approved drug. But if it's sterile, endotoxin free, and potent, then you know the drug is likely to work as expected. And those are really important. So that's why you want to use a compounding pharmacy versus obtaining an RUO grade product. I'm going to say that again because it's not a pharmaceutical grade product, and that's different. You don't want to obtain an RUO grade product from the internet with no medical supervision, no clinical judgment used, no understanding of dosing, strength, purity, sterility, etc. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people understand that, and they obviously couldn't possibly because so many people are using these RUO peptides right now today. So, the demand is there, they're gonna get them. It just makes sense to put them under, the FDA and state boards and physician oversight, to clean this up.
Right, and I think that's what Secretary Kennedy's trying to do. I wish it could move faster, to be perfectly honest, but I think he has a significant agenda. I mean, a significant part of 40% of our GDP is drug and healthcare. So
Right.
he's a busy. The agency's busy. There's been a lot of turnover there, but I think getting these peptides regulated in a different way is critically important for for public health. I know I have children. I mean, I have a 28-year-old son that listens to Joe Rogan's podcast. He's learned all about peptides from it. He
Right.
heard about the Kennedy
Yep.
announcement on the Rogan podcast before I did, and I wrote about this on my blog. I'm getting my FDA advice from my 28-year-old son, who's actually in commercial real estate and not in the FDA world, podcasting or anything else. So
Right.
he called me and said, "Hey, mom, peptides are going to be legal soon." So, again, because he's a 28-year-old male that's into weightlifting and physical fitness, et cetera, he knows all about them. And you
Yes.
learn about them at a gym, just like you said. So,
Yep. Um, that kind of goes into the GLP-1s that are also peptides, of
correct.
course. I have all my friends that are getting retatrutide because they heard it in the gym from these black gray sources. So there's a whole industry of the GLP-1s coming through from these black gray sources, probably multiple times higher than are being produced by the compounding 503As in a personalized, customized manner.
Right. I don't know of any 503As that are producing retatrutide. They can't
Oh,
produce
not not
retatrutide. Yeah, they're
not re
not because it would be illegal but I'm telling you, GLP-1s are what changed the game. I mean, they're peptides, of course, but they really changed the game because it's this simple. They work. So, whether or not you want to believe it or not, it started out as a shortage situation back in 21, 22 when the first ones were approved for weight loss. I think they've been used a little bit off label in compounding pharmacies before then. There's no label in a compounding pharmacy, but I think compounding pharmacies had tinkered with GLP-1s before then, legally, of course, because you can compound with a component of an FDA-approved drug. Semaglutide, et cetera, those are components of FDA-approved drugs. They can be used in compounding. Don't let anyone tell you anything differently. So there are other things you need to comply with to do it, but they absolutely can be used legally in a compounded formulation by a 503A. What happened here is that back in 22, these drugs were on what's called FDA's drug shortage list. And when they're on FDA's drug shortage list, but any compounder can compound a shortage medication. Again, that's how compounders work within our nation's drug supply chain. They alleviate shortages. And that's what compounders did. Why was the drug on shortage? Because everyone was using it. Everyone was using the Novo drug, then later the Lilly drug, because they're miraculous weight loss medications. And how did they learn about these miraculous weight loss medications? They learned about them through marketing by the brands. So it wasn't that compounders were doing the marketing of these miraculous weight loss drugs when they first were FDA approved. It was the brand marketing that got everyone interested in taking them. Then these went on shortage because of manufacturing issues at these sites and a lot of other reasons. But the advertising and promotion of these incredible products didn't stop. All right. So the shortage continued until 2025. So there was 4 or so years of uninterrupted, unmitigated compounding and selling, dispensing, distributing legally of these miraculous medications. And the products did go off shortage. All right. So what does that mean? When the products went off shortage in 2025, it meant that 503Bs, the big outsourcing facilities, could no longer make them because they're not permitted to make something that's not on their list of substances that can be used in compounding. Semaglutide, not on the list, can't make them. 503As can still make them because why? Tirzepatide and semaglutide are components of FDA-approved drugs. Full stop. They can't be an essential copy of the FDA-approved drug, but they can still be made so long as there's a significant difference between the FDA-approved drug and the compounded formulation. Full stop, period. A significant difference between them. So if your compounding pharmacy is compounding a GLP-1 using semaglutide or tirzepatide, and there's a significant difference between that compound than the FDA-approved drug, then that is a legal product. It's not a counterfeit. It's not a knockoff. It's not a fake. It's not a mass-marketed drug. It's a legally compounded formulation that is exempt from FDA's drug approval requirements.
That is amazing, and of course, I know that to be true, but the general public doesn't know that, and I would say even some members of state pharmacy boards don't understand that.
I mean, I've been on panels with lawyers from the brands, and they pitch the mass marketing issue or the personalization issue, all this stuff. And sure, you can't you they don't like what compounders are saying, okay? It's not what compounders are doing, it's what they're saying, in my opinion. They're saying it's the same as the brand. They're saying the brands don't like the mass marketing of the compounds, but there's nothing illegal about they're not mass marketed. There's nothing illegal about mass marketing. Mass marketing is not even defined in like the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. That's a word, a phrase, a communication made up by Big Pharma. But the way that I pitch this is that compounders are filling a void. They're compounding product pursuant to prescriptions for individually identified patients under a doctor's care, whether it's a telemedicine doctor, which is perfectly legal, or your neighborhood doctor, which is also perfectly legal, and they're providing these compounded formulations as dispensed to these patients. So,
Right. Yeah, we see it, just the confusion out there, but the compounded pharmacies have clearly filled a tremendous void. They're there for the customized, personalized care, which personally, from my standpoint, I want nothing but customized, personalized care for the rest of my life. Like, don't put me in a group. So, I love what they're doing, and it's consistent with the movement towards maximizing your health at any age and customizing what's right for you, realizing all people are different. So,
right. There's plenty of this to go around. I mean, there really, really is. The tirzepatide active pharmaceutical ingredient, the semaglutide active pharmaceutical ingredient, those are available. Those are made by FDA registered manufacturers that are on a list that FDA has made available. If your pharmacy is buying the API, tirzepatide and semaglutide, from a green listed manufacturer, and then the pharmacy follows good practices and procedures to compound the drug, that's not an issue as far as I'm concerned, so long as it's not a copy. And
right.
and that's where, that message is lost. Big Pharma likes to say all of these are copies. The one issue that I think compounding pharmacies or platforms should be careful about is the advertising and promotion. Don't oversell it. And I've said to all of them, it's not what you're doing, it's what you're saying about it that's going to get you in the crosshairs of the federal agencies or of Big Pharma. So this stuff, is my children's generations and my generation's wonder drug. It works. There's an efficacy like no other drug in the history that of weight loss that we've seen. New ones are coming out, like retatrutide, that are going to be likely even more efficacious. So these products sell themselves at this point. Compounding pharmacies and platforms don't need to market these
Yep.
products.
I want to touch on with all these new indications that are coming out,
Mhm.
in the ultra dosing and the quote unquote microdosing or ultra low dosing, that is where a lot of this customized, personalized care is going. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Like the addiction treatment arena, it's just amazing. My weight loss patients that suddenly they don't drink alcohol anymore. They just don't have
Right.
to drive that cue-induced drive, or all the impulsive, compulsive behaviors of gambling or scrolling on the internet or whatever it is, narcotics, tobacco, all of the habits that we would like better control over, you get better control over on the GLP-1s. And it might be the ultra low dose that gives you as much as the higher dose. And all these add-ons like the GIP receptors and the glucagon receptors, they don't really matter. These are GLP-1 effects unaffected by glucagon receptors. So semaglutide, the original, that was only a GLP-1 receptor, should be as good as any of them for all these alternative indications.
Right. I'm excited about it. I mean, I think that we'll see. I mean, the big pharma is making sure that all of this stuff is reflected in, adequate and well-controlled studies and all of that, I'm sure, because they want to be able to, you can't market and promote for those types of claims, those type of health benefits and claims, unless it's the subject of an adequate and well-controlled study. But I've certainly, an FDA submitted to the FDA, basically, for lack of a better way of a better way of saying it. I do believe that these drugs um, do offer far more benefits than we know. And from the best of my knowledge and experience, I think their safety profiles are fairly good. I mean, they're good. They're great. These drugs have been around a long time because they've been used to treat diabetes before they were used to that's how their indication for weight loss was found. It was, the diabetes patients that were taking these drugs were losing a lot of weight. So
Right.
it became a secondary finding of diabetes treatment. So my friends and colleagues and relatives that are on these GLP-1s, whether it's semaglutide, tirzepatide, etc., and I even know people that are on the retatrutide RUO, have said that their noise is gone. Their food noise is gone. Their alcohol noise is gone. Their test results are fabulous. They feel much better. They're the thinnest they've ever been. They've been able to break weight loss barriers that they never were able to break using any other, diet or other medical treatment. So this has been really remarkable for me to watch as an attorney. I'm not here to promote or advertise any brand or type or treatment or practice or what have you, but I've just been shocked by what I've seen over the past since 2022 when I started paying attention to this.
Yep. Yeah, we obviously having a large weight loss practice, we see it, and just the impact beyond weight loss, like
What's
as you
happened to bariatric surgeries, may I ask?
were So, I retired 2 years ago, I guess, from bariatric surgery and had done a lot of GLP-1s while I was a bariatric surgeon. And I was actually talking patients into GLP-1s and away from bariatric surgery as a bariatric surgeon. I'm like, you've got less than 100 pounds to lose. You do not need surgery, the GLP-1. So, I retired. So certainly the whole bariatric surgery field has taken a big hit because these meds are so powerful and access is so great and they're so safe. So, yeah, I think the whole industry has taken a hit.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch.
What are we going to do with this gray black market over time? Who do you think that survives? Should all the peptides being made in 503As, if the FDA approves that and provides a route, a much safer, scrutinized physician oversight route, do you think that will decrease this black gray market?
I think it will decrease it, but Dr. Lavin, as you probably know, I think it will decrease it, and that's good because I want people who take peptides to take the safest peptides they can possibly take and the most efficacious peptides that they can possibly take, and I want them to get them from a legitimate medical and pharmaceutical source, which would be a compounding pharmacy, and as directed by your medical practitioner, period. That's important. It is the most important thing about all that because there are medical practitioners out there that understand how peptides work. And by the way, for your particular chemistry or body or health profile, certain cancers, etc., maybe peptides are the absolute wrong thing for you. But
Right.
your doctor needs to work with you. Your wellness physician who has experience with these needs to work with you and determine what is best for you personally. So that's where I want to see this go. I really do. And I think that getting this PCAC going, the Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee going and reviewing these is the first step to doing that. I honestly do. Um, I think that it's going to be a while, and because peptides make money, they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Um, while this PCAC process goes down the road. I think there'll still be the black-gray market of making peptides available. I just would advise people to be very, very careful about what they're doing there, given the lack of medical supervision, most typically, and knowledge of your source of your medications, um, if it's not compounded at a compounding pharmacy.
Reflect on your entry into compounding because you started when there was the worst problem you could have ever imagined on the planet. And now you're in an era where compounding pharmacies are booming and delivering to patients this customized, personalized care. You know, you're the rock star of the industry now, where it was an industry where there were no rock stars back in 2012.
Yeah, there were only a few of us that actually did this work back in 2012, and I'm actually very close with one of the other lawyers that does this work, Rachel Pontiki. She's a very good friend of mine, and she and I have basically stuck it out from the beginning. But I think that back in 2012, the quality of compounding is just vastly different than it is right now. Because I think in 2012, FDA hadn't paid any attention to compounding for 10 years, okay? They hadn't. The 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 act that created 503A was passed in 1997. It was challenged almost immediately for being unconstitutional in terms of regulating advertising by compounders. So FDA took no enforcement action with respect to compounding for, from 1997 to 2012. Okay, none. So that created this void of people that didn't compound well. I mean, you didn't compound in a clean room. You had, vinyl, you know, barriers that were flappy pieces of paper up. You dog hair, your dog was next to you in your clean room. I mean, it was just like a
Oh,
not a healthy environment. There were vermin, pests, bugs, etc. People didn't really understand the importance of good aseptic control in a clean room. So fast forward, what I've loved seeing is, starting in 2012 when I got involved in compounding, I was like in the hot seat all the time. I learned more about compounding, product recalls, shutting down pharmacies, consent decrees than I ever wanted to know.
right.
Because that's really what I spent my time doing. FDA went on a compounding enforcement project in from 2012 to about 2018, where it went into 503A pharmacies and basically told them what they were doing wrong, tried to clean them up, gave them a chance, and if they couldn't do it, they'd tell them it would be time to close. Um, I also got involved in the 503B space, same thing. It's come such a long way. These drugs are so well made at this point in time. They're made under sterile aseptic conditions, under clean rooms in control of their aseptic environment. They are tested appropriately. These are products that are intended to heal, not make you sick. So and compounders are doing a wonderful job of ensuring um, that. I think one thing we should just mention is that this has been a difficult time since these GLP-1s have gone off shortage, which is in the spring of 2025. Um, you know, Company pharmacies, clinics, compounding platforms have really been under attack, and I want to point that out. And that attack is unnecessary. And again, it's not what they're doing; it's what compounders may be saying about what they're doing. And so compounders need to be a little bit more careful about their communications to the public about compounding. But regardless, their products are appropriately compounded and they're legally compounded. So Big Pharma has been extraordinarily active in litigation, lobbying, and incredible amounts of PR at both the state level and the federal level, trying to knock legitimate compounding, and it really needs to stop. So I want locals and everyone to support their compounding pharmacies to ensure that they're not thwarted doing what they're doing based upon big pharma's disdain for compounders that make GLP-1s, because GLP-1s is only part of it. Compounders do a lot more, and I'm afraid that the big pharma push to curtail what they consider counterfeit, rogue, mass-produced, all untrue, compounded GLP-1s is really harming the market for a lot of drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. When you were describing the old compound pharmacies pre, 2012, I'm thinking that could be some of these, RUOs in a bottle. Like,
Right.
who the heck knows where they're being produced?
I
So,
mean, yeah, so that's scary. I mean, and people are taking them. It bothers me because they're young people taking them, and I just know that from my own kids. And my own kids aren't bad kids; they are normal kids that actually are health nuts. And
right,
so
right.
that's what. And they're not kids; they're adults. But that's where this gets a little confused because
Yeah,
people are taking these peptides, gray black market for health, wellness, longevity, etc. And there's really no indication of what it's doing inside of your body, without
right,
that's why I really worry about the medical supervision piece, I honestly do.
right,
Not only would a doctor ensure most likely that the drug is from an appropriate source, um, I would hope, but, the patient so the pharmacy would also be able to source the drug appropriately for use in a
right.
patient. I think all of that is very, very important. And it's I don't know when it's going to end. I'm hoping that this Rogan push, I'll call it, through Kennedy, really does slow this uh, down a bit.
Well, I think what's very clear is there's a huge market for it. There's a big health craze amongst younger people, and peptides have this promise of better health. And that market is not going away. It is growing right now, and it will continue to grow through these unsupervised, unregulated source chains until the FDA makes a move and puts it under their scrutiny, which they have every possibility to do right now. And that messaging has to be strong.
Right, right. And I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if in this administration, if they're going to take the time, like take the effort to stop RUO. I think that they expect that giving these some kind of approval through the ability to compound them legally at a 503A will slow down the tide of RUO. And I'm
Right.
wondering if once the announcement comes out about which peptides have passed the PCAC process,
Right.
FDA will then say, hey guys, stop getting these things from, that aren't pharmaceutical grade. Stop using research use only, stop advertising them, stop promoting them, etc. It's hard to stop advertising now. It really, really is.
Right.
Unless you're big pharma, then you can stop
Right.
it. Yeah.
Well, we want to have you back once the FDA makes a move in the right direction. So we appreciate you taking some time out of your crazy busy schedule in DC right now. And once again, really, really appreciate the time.
Thanks so much, Dr. Lavin. Anytime. I love talking about this stuff. It really is, as I said at the beginning, peptides, GLP-1s, compounded formulations are a passion project of mine. I love my clients that engage in this. They're all trying to do the right thing, trying to make Americans healthier. And I believe that this is truly a way to do it if you do it correctly.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.